Hi, and welcome back to Alex Talking. I love going to the movies, and today we're talking about 28 Years Later, a brand new film from Danny Boyle, the 68-year-old filmmaker who 23 years ago brought us 28 Days Later and really revolutionized the genre of zombie films. I am a massive zombie movie fan, so this actually, I will just come right out and say, has been my second most anticipated movie of the year, all year, next to only Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and that came out, and that disappointed me. So, how did 28 Years do? It kicked ass. I absolutely was riveted by this thing. Alex Garland also joined Boyle in coming back to write this one, and I am just so overjoyed to say that 2025 so far has been a great year for franchise horror. And I know that's not something that is like something that I even champion, but I simply am going to today for the fact that these are franchises that are like Final Destination or a new Wolfman movie. And now, 28 years later, a movie that I've wanted to see for years, and it's finally happening, and it's finally here. And like, it was the type of thing when this trilogy was announced, I thought, wow, a trilogy? That's that's not going to get made. And here we are, and the first one comes out, and it's phenomenal. And I'm like, holy shit! There's a trilogy of 28 years later movies coming out, written by Alex Garland. They are real. They are filmed and they are awesome. This movie was awesome. I think that this has some of the coolest zombie footage ever. I was settled into it right away because you have this opening. And I'm just going to say, I am a weirdo who has always, just to put into context how much I enjoy these movies, I've always enjoyed 28 Weeks Later more than 28 Days Later. And that's not me saying hot take 28 Days Later is bad. No, 28 Days Later is great. 28 Weeks Later is great. I really think 28 Weeks Later has such a mean spiritedness to it that I don't know. I understand not liking it as much. Funny enough, I was looking and I had watched it in 2020 and gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd. My Letterboxd will be down in the comments if you want to follow me there, Magnolia fan. But just using that as my point of reference for what I mean when I'm saying I looked. I looked on Letterboxd and saw that I watched it in 2020 and gave it 4 stars 28 weeks later. Then I watched it again a year later and gave it 3.5. And I always think by that time in my life, 2021 to 2022, not to say that I'm like an evil person now, but I really had an issue with mean-spirited media. Saw this. There was one other one that was just springing to mind that escapes me right now. Oh, X. X. I hated X. I almost walked out of the theater when I saw X. In that part of my life. And now I rewatched X and I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. You know, it's not great, but definitely not something that I detested as much as the first time I saw it. And 28 weeks later has always been mean spirited to me, and this most recent rewatch of that just 2 nights ago really solidified just how much that's just a core of these movies, because that third act of 28 Days is brutally dark, and there's just a mean streak that is required to them. And once again, going back to this opening that was great, and I consider 28 Weeks Later to have one of the best openings of any horror movie ever. It is the most interesting part of that movie. Like, I understand. I've had a lot of conversations with people recently about it, just because I've been like, hey, I'm excited for 28 Years Later. Have you seen them? They're always like, I've seen the first one and I really didn't like the second, or I never bothered with the second. And I'm always like, it's really good. And I always just say, watch the opening. If you like it, I mean, then you're settled in and enjoy the movie. If you don't, I'm not going to blame you, because it is a lot to take in and can be a deal breaker right off the bat for a lot of people. Like, my girlfriend was really taken aback by it when we watched it 2 nights ago. So that's all to say. This movie opens with an equally mean opening, a brutal opening, and I was very delighted by that. I was on the edge of my seat. I was riveted by the footage. The footage, oh my gosh, that was the other thing that settled me into it. The footage, the quality of the footage. One of the core ingredients of 28 Days Later is that it looks like shit. It looks horrible. It is shot on like a Samsung fridge from 2009. It looks just the worst quality of digital camera you can imagine. To the point that like that movie, it feels as impossible to upscale in Blu-ray or 4K in any way because there's just no version of it I've ever seen. I've seen that one 3 times now, and there's no version of it that looks good. It's not like that doesn't make the movie bad. It just the very first time I ever saw that movie was the lowest rating I ever gave it. I gave it a 3.5 the first time I saw it, and the only reason I was like, "This is a great movie," but what the hell is the footage? Like why does it look like this? I think my buddy has a bootleg DVD of it because I borrowed it from my friend. And then I rewatched it and I was like, oh, that's just what the movie looks like. Okay. And to me, that's just almost a joke at this point. Like whenever I was showing it to MC, my fiance, like I said, when we watched the first one, I was like, what do you think of the quality of the footage? And she was like, is the internet dropping or something? Like, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, no, it just looks like that. It just looks like that. It's simple as that. And this movie leans into it. It embraces it in such a wonderful way. And I was overjoyed that I can just be like, yes, it's part of these movies. It's a stylistic choice, whatever it is. It is a core ingredient to what a 28 Later movie is. And I'm so interested because, for those who don't know, this is the first in a trilogy, and the second film will be directed by Nia DaCosta coming next January, or this January, in 6 months. I'm so hype. And Nia DaCosta made the Candyman remake, if you don't remember, and that was a phenomenally directed movie. Like, you can have whatever qualms you want with the writing in it. I've seen that movie like 4 times. I really like it. But that movie is directed and shot beautifully. But here's the thing that interests me. It's so specific, the way that Danny Boyle makes these movies. So specific that you see the difference between Days and Weeks' direction. Not in the opening sequence of Weeks, mind you. Maybe Danny Boyle shot that. But you see the difference in the direction and the rest of it. Direction isn't everything. Like I said, honestly, the story to me is more engaging in Weeks than Days. With the family is why I prefer that one. And there's great zombie action in that one. But the direction that Boyle does with these 2 movies, I think it's now that there's a second one, and I just see how distinctly similar they are and how much I like that raw, kinetic, frantic, insane style. It's bonkers. It's like, okay, now cut to the beautiful shot. All right. Now cut to the shot that looks like complete shit. Okay, hold. All right. Cut to an infrared shot of a deer getting its head ripped off. That's what directing is and what it should be, and that's what zombie movies should be, and that's awesome. So I really, really had a blast with being able to just really enjoy how much this felt like 28 days later, 28 years later. And this had the best chase sequences of the entire series so far. This movie is a story of 3 acts, to be 100% honest. The first act is kind of like the French Dispatch, in which I'm like, I'm going to say the first act is my favorite. And then I'm like, but once I actually think about the second act, it might be my favorite. But the third act really actually might be my favorite. So I liked everything differently. And it was also cool because this movie's a mystery in a lot of ways. The first half, or the first act, is very straightforward. I think people who don't like to be challenged, and I'm sorry, like, if you like the first act the most, don't be insulted by this statement. I realized as I was saying it.
that it could come off that way. I think people who don't like to be challenged by films will absolutely like the first act of this movie. I think that it is exactly what you're signing up for, and it is a phenomenal version of what you're signing up for. It is the part of the movie that features the coolest zombie footage I've seen in years. Like, decades, since Day of the Dead, probably. And I mean that. Like, this is fantastic zombie action. Like, I'm thinking of the shots from behind whenever the zombies are crawling on the ground. Visceral. Absolutely visceral. The shots in infrared of the zombies are just masterfully cool. And, like, just so visually striking that I'm very, very compelled by just that sort of scene. When in reality, what does the dare scene mean? Does it symbolize something? Maybe. I don't have it yet. I do have a ticket to go see it at 2 o'clock today for a second time, so maybe I'll get something this time, because I kind of thought there could be something there. It could even be tied to the ending, people, was a thought I had. But I don't really know. But at the end of the day, I love looking at what happens to that deer just because it's fucking insane, and that's what zombie movies should have. So I thought that was great. Absolutely loved that. The kills are all fantastic. The best kills in this movie all have to do with spines. Predator loves being like, man, I like having little skulls with spines attached to them. But how often do you actually see a shot of a Predator ripping somebody's fucking head off and it looks like, wow, oh my gosh, that's what it would look like for a human to get their head ripped out directly off their shoulders with their spine attached. That was insane. I can't even think of one shot in which a Predator does that and it's actually really cool. They just have spines and like the spines. But in this movie, oh buddy, I like watching people get their head ripped off and have the spines come out. I do. I really do. And I hope Goliath is in the sequels, and I hope he gets some more heads. Now, speaking of heads, and bones, and skulls, let's get to the Bone Temple and the third act of this movie. Once again, full spoilers from here on out. This is a great movie. I found the Bone Temple part of this movie to be so powerful in its symbolism and messaging and themes. And Alex Garland wrote this movie. Alex Garland is a fantastic writer. You know, that's not a hot take, really. But he's a writer that has a lot of movies that rub people the wrong way. He's a writer that never makes a movie that's safe, never makes a movie that isn't saying something. He is a very thoughtful person in the way he writes and makes movies. And this movie is very clear that he had about 1 billion things to say. And he wrote this in a very, very interesting way to me, because I have never been bothered by his style of scattershot but poignant writing, is the way I would describe it. Scattershot in, okay, this movie's got everything. It's got commentary on war. It's got commentary on death. It's got commentary on truth and the nature of it. The nature of the human condition, our unending capacity for violence, the sins of the father, the hubris of the son, the complexity of myth building and legends in communities, isolation, plastic surgery, rage. I even had something in this movie that made me really think that it was a commentary on abortion, to be honest. Trigger warning, I don't even know. I'm not monetized. I don't make money on YouTube, so I was going to say, I don't know what this is going to do to the algorithm. Sometimes people say if you say stuff like that in a video, it's no good. But the way that the And I do this scattershot. I just talk about different scenes. I said I was going to talk about the third act and the bone temple, but now I'm going to talk about the way that the infected birthing sequence plays out is a great example of Garland's writing and almost the linchpin of where I imagine this movie loses people. Because it lost my fiance. She didn't like it at all. It's like one of the biggest disparities in our opinion coming out of a movie that I can remember ever having. Like we don't always agree on everything, but this is like me and her have night and day opinions of this movie. And she only read that scene as stupid. She read a lot of this as stupid. And in a lot of ways, I can see the critique of the script being it's a lot of just, we're going here. We're going from point A to point B. We're here now because of blank. This happened because blank. And that doesn't work for some people. It's simple. It's very simple. It is a boy trying to take care of his mother. But to her, it was about someone who was dumb and thinking his mother he was able to take care of his mother, and a mother who was dumb for not telling the kid that she had cancer. And I have seen, and I don't call her out specifically because that's the conversation I've had in person. There's also online discourse I've seen in the horror community. I've already seen a lot of people loving it, a lot of people having issues with the self-serious nature of it juxtaposed to the outlandish, bizarre, random sequences and scenes. Because at a certain point, it can feel that way, that there's just random sequences and scenes. She kept pointing out, oh, you like the scene of the big boobied plastic surgery girl on the cell phone? Because I always say I hate cell phones in movies. And I was like, honestly, yeah. I thought it was interesting. The commentary on 21st century, how the world kept moving on. One of the most interesting things I wanted to see in a gap between 28 weeks to 28 years later is how they cover and address the rage virus ever left the UK. And I found it extremely interesting the way that they played that theme of isolation and neglect from the rest of the world, and just how, France and Sweden have to do border patrols of the UK to make sure nobody gets out, but it's still 28 years later, still on this just part of the world. I thought that was really interesting. Seeing somebody from Sweden come in and have the perspective of, I should have just been a delivery driver. There's stuff like that where it can feel like just thoughts being explored for 2 minutes here, but you can explore every thought to its fullest extent in a movie. And I will always enjoy the attempt and admire and respect the attempt to give your movie themes and commentary like that, rather than just not. So it never bothers me whenever stuff doesn't get fully fleshed out like that, whenever it doesn't feel half-assed as well. There's a difference between not fully fleshing out and not being half-assed. Because of Garland's quality of writing, the scenes actually play to me like they're accomplishing what he's desiring to just ruminate on. And the biggest rumination in this movie is death. And the way that the mother is discarded after giving birth, the infected mother, I thought was definitely a commentary on, the way some pro-life people view women that get the baby and then waste the mom. Obviously, it's commentary because that's not what it is. She's an infected zombie. Of course you kill her. But in a more subtler way, there is something underneath the surface there that I definitely think I'm not reading too much into. And that is the type of thing that I really appreciated about this movie. The unending capacity for violence we experience as humans. Aaron Taylor Johnson just wanting to show him how to kill. Wanting him to hunt these zombies like sport. So he can come back and tell everybody what a legend his son is because he hates his wife. So he wants to make his life better by making a legend out of his son, by making a member of the community out of his son. I believe is a commentary on, legend making and myth and, how your parents put that type of pressure on you if they're unhappy in their own relationships. Somebody wants to come play. They just woke up. This is Peaches. Peaches, did you see 28 Years Later? No, but you would have loved it, man. But anyways, yeah, I just thought that there was a lot going on with Aaron Taylor Johnson, with the relationship with the son, that is where you can see some things getting their legs cut off, because it did never make sense to me that Aaron Taylor Johnson never came back into the plot in the third act until you see him leave the baby, because there is logical enough writing to it. The tide thing makes enough sense. But I don't think they were out there for just one day, so he should have at least gone out and had at least a little sequence of him looking for them. I would have preferred. That's just my opinion. But that was the only part of the movie that really felt weird to me, that Aaron Taylor Johnson did not have any part of the third act. But that always can be developed and fleshed out more in 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. What you talking about, Willis? So I absolutely am not one to fault this movie for a thing like that, because I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that'll be explored in a direction that I really enjoy in the sequel. And it did not ruin my enjoyment of this overall movie, because the third act just brings the fucking heat. And I think the second act is going to be the hardest for a lot of people to get through. And I can see it just completely losing you, or maybe hooking you back with the third act. And it completely lost, once again, my fiance. That she said the third act was the dumbest thing she'd ever seen. And that Ray Fiennes' character was outacting everybody, but for what? Because the actual plot that he was having to work with, of a mom who lied about, or didn't lie, but just, had cancer but didn't do anything about it, was stupid. And I completely disagree. I think that Memento Mori, this is the rumination on death. And that thought that is most explored in this movie. That's the thought that is the biggest point of focus for Garland in fleshing out in the script. And the way that he wrote this Bone Temple, starting with setting up Ray Fiennes as an insane person from the perspective of Aaron Taylor Johnson, shows it's all about perspective in a world like this as well. And my perspective of this situation as a viewer was, this is really touching. This is really beautiful. This has something to say. And I thought that disposing of her character by having the kid be sedated, and he takes her, he kills her, and he melts her skin off so that he can put her skull on the Bone Temple, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was a very poignant and touching way to handle death, in a way that, what would you prefer? He cries and throws a fit, or she gets bitten by a zombie, And I understand that if you wanted more zombies, I do, but I appreciate the quality over the quantity in a situation like this. Whenever they give you a movie that is quality, that is so quality, and so long in the making, that it can deliver on that and be just a fantastic, exciting follow-up to a really interesting zombie universe, and fleshes it out into maybe one of the coolest zombie universes I think we have. A world that is just 28 years later, the UK is completely ravaged, and who knows what's out there but a bunch of zombies with massive dicks. That's great. And the visual symbolism of the kid embracing it, not throwing a fit, not crying, not telling him I hate you, not thinking, oh my father was right, he is crazy, but appreciating that Spike could take the perspective of, she was gonna die, now let's honor her. She's out of her pain and misery too. She was playing it crazy. And that's another thing. I just want to talk about the cast real quick. Alfie Williams is in his first role here as Spike, and I'll say the kid's going places for sure. He is terrific. I thought it was a great kid performance, and Aaron Taylor Johnson was very good playing off of him. The the mother was played by Jodie Comer, and I thought for sure going in it was going to be Carrie Condon. I think I just wanted a double bill of 28 Years Later in F1, but it was Jodie Comer, and I wasn't bothered by her. MC was just going on and on about how she was overacting and giving such a horrible performance. And I'll be honest, I've seen Jodie Comer in enough stuff to know that she has no clue how to underact or be subtle. So maybe I haven't seen her in enough stuff. Like I didn't mean to completely diminish her, but she's an actress that is very comfortable with overacting. She has overacted in, like I mean, after the Bike Riders, I saw the Bike Riders at a film festival 2 years ago. After that, am I supposed to think that she has any idea what subtlety is? And that's okay. That's okay. It's. I think she's a very fun actor to watch. I loved her performance in The Last Duel, but it's also a lot of big eyes and like a lot of mouth acting, and that's what this is too. And I think she. I mean, MC just really has been digging into how awful her performance was, and it's like that's a tough role to play. Like she's doing okay. I think she did all right. Ray Fiennes did really bring some energy to it, just because not Carrie Condon, Jodie Comer's energy was just not fun to follow in a movie like this, and like the only part where it's like, well, I mean, is she gonna be able to get away from any zombies? She seems pretty cooked, but okay. And that's okay. Like the fact that she was able to, and it's almost like stupid writing, and once again, like focusing on the moments rather than like the minutia of it. That it can be like, well, that was really stupid that they just went in. She picks up a baby and then they run through a train with it until they run to where the doctor was and he's waiting to save them. It's like, I get that. But Goliath is running after them and his dick is just swinging like that, and it's so funny and hilarious to me, and it was good. It was good. Jodie Comer's like doing weird facial acting even while running with a baby. So like it was funny to me. It's like the little nuances of his writing where it's like, I'm going to school whenever he tells his mom that in the morning after the big fight between her and Aaron Taylor Johnson about him taking her off, and then we realize that she's just like so cooked up here that she can't even comprehend a thing. Or like him leaving her with her name is Isla, as his way of letting his father know what happened to his mom and his wife, and almost made the Aaron Taylor Johnson absence from the third act excusable. It made that moment and that letter, the way it was written, more effective for the ending. But let's talk about the actual ending, because this movie ends with like the dude from I think it was the fucking leprechaun villain from Sinners coming down in like a blonde wig with a tracksuit mafia, and they do like flip trick Tony Hawk Pro Skater tricks to kill zombies, which felt right out of an Edgar Wright movie. And I said, fuck yes, these British people are so deranged and fearless when it comes to making mainstream fucking media that's gonna piss people off. Just gonna like that's gonna get so many people entirely disengaged from your movie. Like recoil in such a fast manner that I can't help but love it. Because I was along for the ride, that I was like, what the fuck are these guys doing? This is hilarious. Obviously, the plastic surgery girl on the cell phone didn't bother me. This isn't going to take me out of it. This movie's just funny as fuck. And I really hope that the sequel follows Spike and them. I'm tempted to think that the sequel might follow Ray Fiennes as Dr. Kelson, and the third one will tie together him fully and whatever some big mission or goal is with Spike and the Tracksuit Mafia. The literally only reason I have that guess is that the sequel is called 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. So That's the only reason I think that could be the case, because the title is The Bone Temple, which is very much so associated with Ray Fiennes. Or maybe it's just a very unique title to give your movie that is better than Bloodlines or Resurrection or Part 2. And I fully am on board with that as well. Whatever direction they choose to take these characters, I think will be very interesting, and I think the world in which they built and fleshed out here was phenomenal, and as good of a continuation as the 28 later franchise as I could hope. I would love, after this trilogy, if they got juice left in the tank, go back and make 28 months later, because that feels weird that didn't happen. That one would be cool if they showed just truly like the full shutting down of any sort of centralized power of government of any force in the UK. I mean, 28 Weeks did a lot of that. But just if there's any like straggling other branch or location, I could imagine that being an interesting way to do one of the movies. Just because that's another aspect of 28 Weeks Later I really enjoy. But anyways, I'm just rambling at this point. This was Danny Boyle's Day of the Dead. Him coming back to do the big follow-up years later, not nearly, or much longer than it did take Day of the Dead between Dawn of the Dead. This one was much longer, 23 years in the making, and it lived up to the hype in a way that I am just so astounded to say. I hope I Know What You Did Last Summer and The Black Phone 2 as some of my other favorite horror movies getting sequels this year, which is just a crazy trend that somehow all of my personal favorite ones are getting these sequels. I hope they can keep on living up to the hype that Wolfman and Final Destination and 28 Years Later have set, but this is a 4 out of 5 stars, and it could even get higher upon rewatch, which I am going to do in about 2 hours. So thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what your ranking of the 28 days, years, months, weeks later franchises, and what you thought of this new movie and all the zombies that hanged on.